What is going on? I want to welcome you from half court for today, Wednesday, November 16th, 2022. I'm your host, Sean Murphy, alongside my guy, Jeff. I afraid Jeff. It's so good to see you because this means I'm alive. Like I
Yeah.
survived. I am here
Mhm.
in one piece. Dear God, it's good to see you, my friend.
It's good to see you guys too. And also, hey man, with all that time comes a lot of built up thoughts. All right, we're watching these Pistons games. Honestly, we got a lot to get off our chest today, so I'm
Yeah,
excited. Good to have you
yeah,
back. I'm happy you're
yeah.
healthy.
Yeah, absolutely, man. A lot to get off our chest today, and a lot I had to get out of my chest the last few
Oh,
days. Shout out to Chipotle for all that
true that.
awesome food
True that.
poisoning. But anyway, also here with my guy, Troy Sergey. Troy, how's it going, man? It's good to see you.
It's doing good on this end. I was able to go to an NBA game last week. Saw the Joker play in person. Saw some Michael Porter Jr. Saw an old friend named Contavious Caldwell Pope. That was pretty cool. And I saw the Nuggets beat the Pacers in a close game on Wednesday. That was fun. But we have a lot to talk about. The big thing I'm happy about is our boy Killian Hayes. He's playing great basketball. For me, that's been the highlight of the week, Pistons wise. And I'm sure we'll get to that in a second. But I wanted to give a shout out to our man Killian because
Absolutely.
we on this podcast, we haven't been like over the toply pro Killian, but we certainly haven't been bashing the guy. Last week we had some critical things to say, but for the most part, this is still a very pro Killian in his development podcast.
We were critical, but we didn't write him off like I think a lot of people instinctively did after that first week. And we'll talk about why in a minute, because this is from Half Court Reach, and every week we talk all things NBA basketball. Oh my God, it feels so good to say that again. It's so good to be back. If you like that, be sure you like this video, subscribe to the podcast, and be sure that you share with your friends and join in the conversation down below. Also, if you want or interested in if you are interested in a From Half Court Discord, let me know in the comment section down below. That is something we might be getting started as well. But with that, gentlemen, let's talk NBA basketball because there is a lot of things to discuss. We're going to get all things NBA in a little bit, but as we usually do here, we start with our Detroit Pistons. And as you guys know, it's been a rough week in the Pistons world as far as, both results on the court and injuries that are keeping players off the court. Specifically, Cade Cunningham has reportedly been dealing with some shin soreness since the beginning of the season, and it lingered over to his rough performance in Boston. And from that night on, he has not played since and is reportedly going to miss at least until Sunday, when the Pistons, I believe, are supposed to play the Kings in Sacramento. But that's at the very least. And in addition, the Pistons just got back Marvin Bagley, just got back Alec Burks, and in the very first game that they did their first experimentation with a double big lineup, Isaiah Stewart sprains his right foot, and according to Woj, confirmed by James Edwards III and Mike Curtis, Isaiah Stewart will be reevaluated in 2 to 3 weeks. So just as quick as we got our big depth back, as quickly did we lose it right then and there. Now, guys, the Pistons are without not one, but two key franchise players.
Yeah.
In Cade Cunningham and then Isaiah Stewart, who's a foundational piece of this rebuild. He might not be the franchise player that Cade is, but Isaiah Stewart certainly is an anchor in this lineup. Without them both, the Pistons are going to need players to step up in order to get back in the win column. Now, I know this is something that we address pretty regularly. I don't really want to dive deep into the reasoning of this, but I'm not calling for Dwayne Casey's job. Jeff, I'm assuming you're not calling for Dwayne Casey's job.
No.
Troy, I'm going to go out on a limb and saying you're not calling for Dwayne Casey's job, even if there's questions that you can have about rotations and maybe lineups you think that could have handled certain situations a little bit better than others. I think we see the reasons why this team is only at 3 wins, and I don't think it's because of coaching, and I think you guys would agree with that, correct?
Yeah.
Correct.
And I think we all agree the second that we think it's because of coaching that we're going to bring it up, correct?
Also correct.
All right,
And-
perfect. So until then, we will table that discussion. So let's talk about the other pieces. The Pistons last night, specifically against the Raptors, as of recording, this was last night, they missed 12 free throws. Specifically, Bojan Bogdanovic missed 4 himself. If Bojan just went 10 for 10 from the line, that game would have gone to overtime. And I know a lot of people are getting really critical of Bojan and his performance, but I mean, that's the catch-22 of Bojan. You know, he's a very consistent player. But you know, he's going to have rough nights just like anybody else. But that's the thing. If he's not necessarily scoring, he's not necessarily going to be extremely effective. But that's the thing. There's not going to be many nights where he isn't scoring. So, Jeff, what are some things that you know, because to me, like free throws, that's just one quick example of a way that the Pistons can improve, right?
Yeah.
Jeff, to you, what's an example of something that you see that's like an obvious reason why the Pistons are struggling that they can improve on? And also, what do you think are like the players? Obviously, Jaden Ivey's one that's going to have to step up in these guys' absence. But what are some other players that you're looking to step up in the absence of 2 key guys like Cade and Isaiah Stewart?
Well, I'll start with the reasons why at least they lost last night. It's turnovers, and that was especially in the first half. Like the amount of turnovers they had, and again, that helps with Cade being there, having another ball handler. But that's kind of been the constant theme all year. And the other thing is defensively. And guys, think about it. Both those things, turnovers and defense, that's a part of a young team. And that's really what comes last is learning how to take care of the ball, especially with 2 young guards. And then you have defense, which again, offense always comes first for young players. Defense is really, it's effort, it's being locked in, it's being in the right position. So those 2 things are really what I've seen. And again, those things can be corrected. But to answer the second part of your question, who should step up? In my opinion, it's pretty obvious, at least for Isaiah Stewart, and that's Jalen Duren. Like this is a guy that's obviously been ahead of schedule. I don't know if he'll start. I would assume Nerlens Noel gets that nod, and then maybe you still have Duren off the bench. I wouldn't mind him starting, but either way, he's going to play more minutes. So
I wonder if Marvin Bagley just slides over to that 5 position.
Could be as well.
And then they just go back to Saddiq at the 3 and Bojan at the 4. I wonder if that's a possible lineup. But then you talk about the defense there. I mean,
yeah.
Troy, what do you think?
Yeah. I think something that we haven't really touched on a lot is containing other team stars. I think that's something that we haven't done a great job at. We looked at what Jason Tatum put up with the Celtics the other night. Although we won the game, you know, I guess we did a good job containing Curry, but he still got his own little more than I'm sure Dwayne Casey would have wanted, and even Giannis as well, in his Bucks game as too. So you know that is going to be the difference. Now every team has a guy who can go out there and get a bucket. We're not saying limit them to less than 5 points or anything like that. What we're saying is contain them, because I think containing stars puts you as the underdog at an advantage. And really, the Pistons, for literally every game that they play except maybe the Thunder, and we already played that game. We have one more, I guess. And I don't know, the Magic, but even them, Paulo's, you know, a star in the making. Like every game what we play, we're going to be the underdog is what I'm trying to say, except maybe those 2 teams. So to always contain their team's best player is going to be a challenge, literally every single game we play. And then the second thing, who's going to have to step up, I think that whole second unit, to be honest with you, I think a lot of our struggles, to be honest with you, my opinion has been when that second unit's out there. I think a more consistent Hami would be a great thing that we could look at. Isaiah Livers has been playing well, but even some more production out of him. I know with the second round pick, it's hard to put that weight on a guy like his shoulders, but I think we have seen potential in him where he could be a reliable source. So to maybe challenge him to make that next step in his game, I think would be a good idea. But of course, it's the stars. Of course, it's guys like Ivy, especially with Cade's little injury there, but also Saddiq too. Another guy who's kind of had a roller coaster year. We've seen Saddiq play some great basketball. We've seen him have some really cold nights, some not just cold nights, but unproductive nights in both sides of the floor and really all sides of the stat line as well. So
yeah,
I think I covered majority of what I wanted to say there.
Yeah, for sure. I think one area where we're like, right, like not say like where I'd like push back, but I think like with as far as containing like their star players, I think what we've seen this season, and like actually one thing I wanted to bring up about NBA wide is I think the idea of containing a star player at this point is almost impossible because because currently like 13, 14 games in, we're seeing 7 guys averaging 30 plus points a game, which is the most we've ever seen in the modern NBA era. And the other thing too, you look at like a lot of like these Pistons losses that they've had over the past week, and like Jason Tatum, for example, like in the game against like at home against Detroit in their second matchup. Jason Tatum had 43 points. To your point, they have to contain him, and they have to, like, if they can keep him under 40, right? Like that's a great start. But I think on the other hand, you look at what else killed Detroit in that game. Grant Williams had 19 points. Marcus Smart had 18 points. So like the big thing, and especially like what even Detroit did in the finals against the Lakers in 04, they were like, well, Shaq's going to get his. It's about keeping Kobe and the rest from going and affecting the game.
And they did that against the Thunder too, because Shea had like 31, 33, and the others, no one else, I think, had like one person in double digits besides him. So
well, even like against Toronto last night, it's like, it's an opportunity. Like, it's like, all right, well, it's an opportunity because you're playing them without, Pascal Siakam. You're playing them with, Scotty Barnes is really like their main threat. Scotty Barnes was the one that beat you. The guys that beat you were Delano Banton and OG Anunoby and Chris Boucher.
Right. So like, I guess in modern day NBA, it's a coin toss,
Right. But but what I'm saying, Troy,
contain one or the other. Right. What you're saying more so the other players than the star.
Yeah.
And I guess I can't disagree with that.
Yeah. But it's like, but I think in my opinion, it's like, obviously it's like, I agree with you. It's like, you got to focus on containing the stars, but like, to me, it starts about like, especially like with these younger teams, it's like, it starts around the edges, in my opinion. It starts like, you got to make sure you're stopping like the league average first.
Your guy.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Right. And then at that point, let's start talking about how we can contain Tatum. First, let's make sure like guys like deeper, let's make sure Sam Hauser is going to beat us. You know what I mean?
Right. Sure.
So,
yeah, that's a good thought. Absolutely.
Yeah. So, it's things like that I think are like extremely fixable. And to me, with the Saddiq Bey aspect of the conversation, because I do want to talk like positive stuff because Killian's been playing really well. I think Saddiq, it's been interesting to see how his games evolved this year, because on one hand, his shot isn't there nearly as much as it was last year. And I don't know if that's just because of like, the way the lineup's been going with him playing with Bojan more. And obviously we've seen him being inserted into the second unit and being played, like in the thought of him being kind of the leader of that offensive unit, and like having the ball in his hands with those guys. But at the same time, we still have seen him active in the points column, even though he's not, shooting well from beyond the arc. And a lot of it is he's getting to the free throw line a lot. But in addition, he's penetrating and getting good looks at the rim. So I think Saddiq, like, it's kind of been a mixed bag. But Jeff, Troy, do you guys think Saddiq's shot is something you're concerned about, or do you think it'll eventually come? Is this something that you think is like last year, where he's just struggling to get going at the beginning of the season? What are your guys' thoughts?
Well, my concern is that we've had this discussion last year. It's not that he can or cannot do it. It's just how consistently can you do it? And that was the conversation we had. It's like you'll see Saddiq 4 for 9 one night. The next night he's 1 for 8. And now this year you're really seeing more so the 1 for 8 or the 2 for 7s. You're seeing him struggle. So I'm not going to say I'm concerned through 15 games. Sorry, I had to double check there. 15 games. I'm not going to say I'm concerned. Now, for 50, 60 games in, he's still struggling. Yes, I'll be more concerned. But I just need him to get consistent. I think sometimes with Saddiq, especially playing with Bojan, there'll be times where he's settling and turning into a strictly three-point shooter. You'll see he'll have like 11 shot attempts and like 5 or 6 of them are threes. I would like Saddiq to kind of, we know he's better than that, but at the same time, it's like, hey, if your shot's not falling, you got to figure it out somehow. So for Saddiq, I'm not concerned yet. It's something to pay attention to, but like you said, Sean, he's finding ways to score points regardless if his shot's falling. I believe over the last 9 games, he's given you 17, 4, and 2. I mean, not on great percentages, but still, to your point, getting to the free throw line, he's finding other ways to do it. So I'm not going to say I'm concerned just yet through 15 games.
And I'll give him the benefit of the doubt too. Kind of, you gave that option too, Sean. Of is it something we're seeing like last year? Sure, why not? The consistency, that was our big thing last year, and Jeff hit on that totally. But what is cool is this way is I think he's finding, like Jeff said, that ability to score in ways that maybe he wasn't last year too. Even get into the hole a little bit better this year. And basket cuts, we've seen quite a bit of those this year as well too. So those are things to work on too. But I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt, saying that the consistency that we're talking about, that we're seeing a lack of, I think that will develop more, and we'll see a more consistent Saddiq mid-season, January, February.
Yeah, and I think part of it too, we talk about, not just, figuring out, that balance of him alongside Bojan, but also the fit of him with Jaden Ivey, the fit of him with Jalen Duren, the fit of him with Marvin Bagley in this context. One of the things that's important in a rebuild, and especially in this restoration, is not only compiling the assets that you have, but figuring out where they fit best, right? And that's why you're seeing the experimentation with the lineups, right? Like that's why we're not just seeing, Duren and Stu in the starting lineup day one, because again, like just as a reminder, because we're going to keep doing it until it's no longer the case. Jalen Duren's still 18 years old. He still hasn't turned 19 yet. And so that's a thing. But in addition, they have the ability and they have the option to play and maneuver, because there's 82 games in a season. And so, I think with Saddiq, I do like the idea of him playing more of that second unit, because it is clear that they need more offense with that unit. But in addition, if we're talking about a second unit shooting wise, having Isaiah Livers, Alec Burks, and Saddiq Bey, alongside Killian Hayes, having that type of weaponry for him, playmaking wise, that puts him in a position to succeed. And then throw whoever you want, staggering alongside him, Jaden Ivey, Cade Cunningham, Marvin Bagley. You can do a lot of different things with that lineup. Right. That's way more competitive than what we saw at the beginning of the season.
Mm-hmm. And we definitely see scenarios too where, and this is before Burks or Bagley came back, where you'd score 60 in the first half, the bench unit would come in the third quarter, late in the third quarter, and leads or at least deficits would increase or leads would slip away. So with Burks and Bagley back, it's kind of unfortunate. At the same time, Stewart goes out, now Cade's out, but what you're expecting is with this complete bench, and we kind of talked about this as well with Killian, this is better for him, because you were playing guys like Corey Joseph, Kevin Knox, and Hami. And listen, Hamidou Diallo, I'm a little bipolar with him this year. Sometimes I'll like what Hami brings. Sometimes I'm completely disgusted with what Hami brings. It's like it's kind of like a hot and cold pillow. If you get you flip the pillow, you want it to be cold, and then you flip it again. That's what I'm doing with Hami this year. And
sometimes I like it. Sometimes I'm completely disgusted.
It's one or the other, Sean. So I'm glad Burks and Bagley are back. I think it's tremendous for Killian. And I'm with you. I like Saddiq off the bench. I don't mind it, especially with Bagley coming back. Saddiq can have a little more freedom coming off the bench. He can have the ball in his hands. So I'm all for it. I actually love that decision Dwayne made. He's like, listen, we're going to mix some things up. We'll get some more size in the starting lineup, and I give him credit for that. Although it didn't work out, they lost. Listen, I don't look at the result. I look at the decision, and honestly, I didn't mind it at all.
Also, it's one game.
Right.
Yeah.
So these are conversations too that I think at the end of the day, I trust Dwayne Casey making the most, as far as these lineups, as far as who he's putting in the game at certain times, certain situations, and developing these players too. Because at the end of the day too, some of these young guys, especially how young of a team that we have, a lot of this is a development year too. It's a teaching year in some ways. So those are conversations that are important to look at as well, and trusting our coaching. Because Sean, I know you've said it before. The second that I jump off the Dwayne Casey bandwagon is the second you give me a name of another coach who could do a better job than what he's doing with this core.
Yeah.
And I still haven't been able to see a coach that anyone's been able to show me that can do that. So
hey, before anybody comments, Ime Udoka.
Right, sure.
That's the right PR move. Just go get Udoka.
Well, even then, everyone that says Ime Udoka, tell me exactly what happened in the Boston Celtic camp, because you don't know, because I don't know, because none of us know, because a lot of us are never going to know. And so the reality of it is clearly a lot of dust has to settle before Ime Udoka can get a job. Thus, the reason he wasn't just hired by the Brooklyn Nets, which, by the way, if that job will be offered to him again in the offseason, I'm going to let you know he's going to take it.
Right.
So,
spoiler alert. Yeah.
Yeah. And even then, are you telling me if Ime Udoka is available on the market that he's not going to have the pick of the litter of whatever job he wants if his name is cleared? And are you telling me, no offense, that he's going to pick Detroit? He went to the finals year one, guys. He would literally have whatever job he wants.
Yeah.
And moving on, like another aspect of the Killian Hayes conversation. James Edwards III, actually, he brought this up on Twitter because, fans have been talking about, like Killian Hayes and like the value that he's brought, and like if he's a bust or not. And, James said, I'm always curious, if people base, expectations of number 7 pick from the NFL, because the number 7 pick in the NBA isn't the same as the number 7 pick in the NFL, because we look at like your top 12, top 13 picks in the NFL draft is like Pro Bowl guys, right? Like for all intents and purposes, Jeff, correct me if I'm wrong.
No.
But if you're drafting the top 15, top 20 in the NFL draft, you're either getting a Pro Bowler or a solid starter for years.
Yeah.
That's
definitely
the expectation.
Media
right?
contributor. Yeah.
Yeah, that's the expectation, right? The NBA is a very different thing. And so I actually went and looked to back up this point from James.
Yeah. And we looked at this last podcast, but I mean, it's worth looking at again because you can see some of those names.
I was wondering if we brought this up last podcast, but again, like there's like maybe like 2 or 3 guys that were all stars on this list. Like, again, just a reminder, but talking about like that again, having that expectation of Killian being a solid role player that can contribute. Over the last few games, it looks like, if at least the form that he's been playing, it looks like he can definitely be that. And the confidence he's playing with on both ends of the court, I've been thoroughly impressed. Troy, I want to start with you on this one.
Yeah.
You talked about how impressed you've been with Killian. What stood out to you, and what do you think's been the difference? What do you think, like what switch do you think was flipped for him?
It's the very thing that we were critical on him with, and that's the confidence of shooting the basketball. I think he made a comment after the Boston game in Boston last week, the game that Cade got hurt, I think he said, I figured out this game what I need to do in order to be successful and to score the ball at an NBA level or something along those lines. And I'm ready to do it again. And when I saw that quote, I was like, sure, maybe he got a few pointers, but whatever. I mean, I didn't really think anything really of it. And then he goes out 2-3 games in a row and he's playing like a completely different player, which makes me realize I thought back to that quote of, man, maybe he did learn. Maybe he just needed some of that experience and just more minutes for him to really realize what it takes to score at this level. And not just that, but that to know that he is capable of scoring at this level. Again, it's a mental aspect too, of knowing that he has the physical intangibles and of course the ability, just the pure from a raw talent perspective to go out there and to give you 10, 12 points a night, as well as dishing out the ball for quite a few assists, 5+ assists. And then, his defense is fine too. He hasn't been playing a horrible job. And really, even last week, we weren't super critical about his defense. I think he's shown up to the task.
I was a little critical.
You were a little critical. Yeah, I guess
I was a little critical.
Yeah. But I think in a lot of ways, he has shown up to the task and he's going to give you his all. And I think for this year, my expectations in some ways have already been met by him because I know the potential is there. At least more potential than I saw last year, and especially his rookie year too. I see more now than ever, if that makes sense.
Yeah, Jeff, another thing, another football parallel, Troy hit on something there. We talk about, like, especially like with quarterbacks, we talk about the, adjustment of the speed of the game from college to the pros. And we talk about, how much faster the NFL game is in compared to college. The NBA game is a speed that you cannot replicate at any level, right? Even internationally. And so for Killian to come into this situation, obviously we've seen, what he can do as a playmaker, but like Troy said, if indeed, like, he just mentally, he's starting to click and see and slow down and see where he fits in relation to everyone else on the court, but also where he can get to his spots, how he can get to those spots, and where and how he can be effective in those spots. I mean, last few games, we've seen, Killian go for, 16 points, 11 and 15. Like, the other night against Boston, 15, 7, and 6. If Killian can go out and give you 15, 7, and 6 on a consistent basis,
starting point guard.
What else? Like starting point guard. Imagine having that as your backup point guard.
It's impressive.
Like, holy,
yeah,
I'll take that every day.
Yeah.
And like that's where you talk about like setting the expectation realistically, because everyone came out and saw Killian doing the step back and all this cool stuff. We talk about it all the time after it coming into his rookie year, and it's like, hey, shut the up. That's not him. Just let him be him.
Yeah. And everybody,
if he can be this, that's right.
And it's funny because everybody this year, I think for the most part, there were certainly some, 6th man of the year, 7th man. Listen,
most improved player, like all this
I did
stuff,
see that as well. I did see the most improved player predictions. But for me, I mean, the last 4 games, Killian Hayes, it's been a night and day difference. And what I love also, and this is another praise to Dwayne Casey, is trusting him. Like that's huge. And we talk about, I've never questioned his ability to do what he's been doing over the last couple of games. It was always, and it's same for you, Sean, same for you, Troy. It was mentally like something about putting pressure on himself more than what's already on him. And Dwayne came out with a quote, a beautiful quote. I think it was by James Edwards III, talking about listen, the leash on this rebuild, like on what we're going through right now, a restore, if you want to call it, it's long. Like this isn't a tight leash for Killian. He has the opportunity. He's going to get plenty of opportunities. And if you look over the last 4 games, what I love, and before I get to the stats, if you watch Killian, even last night against the Raptors, you watch Killian turn the ball over, and instead of, that spiraling into other things, he gets a mid-range shot on the other end of the court. Like it translates. So for Killian, last 4 games, I want to read this stat because you kind of mentioned, you kind of alluded to it already, Sean. Last 4 games, he's played 29 minutes a night. Right, so playing a tons of minutes. He's averaging 12, 4.3, 4.3, almost 2 steals, shooting 45% from the field, 33.3% from 3. Like, and he had a game against the Boston Celtics, was actually the second time around. He was 3 for 6 from 3. I was down there in person. I got to see it. Like, you see the confidence with Killian over the last couple of games. It was a blessing in disguise without Cade because he's gotten an opportunity. He got the trust from Dwayne, and he stepped up. Now, we'll see if it can translate. Once Cade comes back, he gets moved to the bench. His role changes a little bit. You're hoping he keeps this up. I don't expect him to give me 12 points a night, but something along those lines, Sean, Pistons fans will take that every single day of the week, twice on Sunday.
And it did start with Cade in the lineup as well, by the way. Like that first game where Killian did play well was when Cade was playing too. So I don't know if it's necessarily a correlation with Cade being out. Hopefully to your point, you can keep that type of production, with the less opportunity and the less minutes. But, hey, if Killian keeps playing like that, he'll certainly find his way on the court for more and more minutes. Another thing, by the way, that I thought that was funny before we go into more NBA wide stuff, I talked all the time about the effect of like what Alec Burks and Marvin Bagley would bring. What did I say about those guys all the time? That it was like that it was like they were missing a combined 30 points a game off of their bench. The very first game Alec Burks and Marvin Bagley played at the same time for the Pistons, they combined for 31 points.
That's great.
Literally first time they were there together, combined 30 points.
That's what we wanted.
You'd prefer those 2 guys over Knox and Corey Joseph, I'll tell you that.
Yeah. And it's like, all right, awesome. And it's like, okay, now we're just missing a Cade Cunningham and an Isaiah Stewart. So now, right when we get 30 points a game, back in the lineup, 30 points a game is gone. Just like that.
Burks has impressed me too, because I mean, he was a guy that did a lot for New York team last year. Sure that New York team wasn't very successful, but to have a guy like him on your second unit, I think we can certainly be satisfied with that.
And he was playing point a little bit too against the Raptors. So
Right.
Burks, man, he's a guy I wouldn't mind here, for a little while. He's a good bench piece, man. He can shoot the ball too. He came right back off injury. He was fine.
Yeah. I mean, especially if he can come back on a team-friendly deal.
Oh,
I mean,
yes,
the guy can shoot the ball. That's for sure. He did not look uncomfortable. Even that first night when he was like, like 1 or 5 or 1 from 6 from 3. I was like, I don't care. You can keep shooting. Your shot
confidence.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Beautiful. From Half Court is brought to you by Manscaped. when we talk about post players, there is few better players in the restricted area than our friends over at Manscaped. With great products such as the Lawnmower 4.0 with skin-safe technology, the Weed Whacker, their deodorants, lotions, and more, Manscaped is unrivaled when it comes to the men's hygiene game, serving over 8 million balls worldwide. That's a lot of testicles, ladies and gentlemen. So, if you're finding yourself in need of Manscaped products, be sure to go to manscaped.com and use code HALFCOURT at checkout because that can get you 20% off plus free shipping. Our friends at Manscaped sent us these products, and I can tell you that they are absolutely for real. I have been absolutely satisfied and in love with their entire product line, from boxers, t-shirts, the Lawnmower 4.0 to the Weed Whacker ear and nose trimmer. You can really not go wrong. Be sure to go to manscaped.com and use code HALFCOURT at checkout for 20% off plus free shipping. Thank you again to our friends at Manscaped for sponsoring this video. But guys, let's talk NBA wide because there is a lot of great things going on in the NBA world right now. You know, we've talked quite a bit, like the last few weeks. I think we're all in agreement that we're still not going to talk about the team in LA because they're not worth talking about. The one thing I will bring up that I do want to bring to the attention of the board is the current speculation that's happening on Twitter. And this could totally be confirmed or squashed by the time the pod comes out tomorrow. So that's why I feel like we have to talk about it. Because apparently Rob Pelinka was spotted in an airport on his way to Indianapolis. And in addition, Buddy Hield tweeted, "Ayo," around 6:07. And we checked. This is actually Buddy Hield. This isn't one of Elon Musk's fake, Twitter accounts or anything. This is actually Buddy Hield.
Are we sure that's Rob Pelinka? Like that's confirmed too? I mean, that's a little bit.
Yeah. I know it's a little hard to see, but
Okay.
I like seeing it from my angle.
Okay.
That is indeed Rob Pelinka.
Okay.
It's hard to tell, but he is wearing a Lakers hoodie.
Okay.
You could tell. He's built like an alien. He's built very, very specific. Like,
yeah, that man is he's got a weird face. I don't
weird build.
I just don't like his face.
So messed up.
But anyway, guys, we're not going to talk about that. But I mean, I just figured I'd bring it up. I do want to hear what your guys' thoughts would be really quickly. Should the Lakers make that trade? Should they touch either? If you were the GM of the Los Angeles Lakers, would you touch either of those 2027, 2029 picks to salvage this season? Yes or no? Troy, I want to start with you.
If I'm the Lakers perspective, is that your question?
Yes. If you are the general manager of the Los Angeles Lakers, are you trading either of those picks to salvage the season?
I'm not because you've already traded too many of your picks, especially this one coming up in 2023 that could very well it will land to the Pelicans, but you don't want that to be a top 3 and God forbid a top 1 pick in this draft. So to me, you've already given up too much that you can't give up more. But if I'm Indiana, I'm really pushing hard for it.
Yeah. Hey. At this current point, by the way, the New Orleans Pelicans both would make the play-in tournament and have some of the top odds to get Victor Wembanyama, thanks to the Los Angeles Lakers. Jeff, what about you?
F them picks. I'm good. Listen, especially, and I'll explain why. Especially in a market like LA, you don't need picks, guys. You can get free agents. And on top of that, you have a short window with LeBron. And he signed an extension. Go out and get Buddy Hield.
What free agents over the last 20 years have they gotten?
Oh, trust me. When you have good players, you can sign. You're going to be able to sign guys. They had opportunity.
How will they get good players?
You're talking about Miles Turner?
They have LeBron James. They have a specific window. They have a specific window they have to capitalize on.
But 2027, how are you getting good players?
Is Buddy Hield on a 1-year deal or is it a 2-year? If it's longer than 1 year, go trade for Buddy. Fuck the picks.
Who's coming to LA to play with Buddy Hield?
No, right now. Would you trade Buddy Hield right now? Yeah, I would.
I said, who's going to be there in 2027, Jeff?
Who's going to be there in 2027?
You don't worry about 2027. You got LeBron in 2022. You'll get to 2027 when you get there. This organization's a disaster. Fuck them picks. Because I don't trust Rob Pelinka to select the right guy anyway. Give it up, get Buddy, and win now with LeBron.
So you want to go
Before he
get
leaves
Buddy
and joins
Hield and
Bronny
Miles
somewhere.
Turner. That's the solution to turn this thing around. They're 3-10. The thing that makes them not 3-10 is trading Russ and 2 picks.
I think it's more about like it depends what these guys' contracts are. It's more about next season to me. Like if you can get them now, get them now, dude. Go get them. I'm all for it. I want to win, especially if if I got LeBron James, I got to capitalize, man.
So guys, for you, it's about freeing that cap space and not paying Russ more than it is of getting Buddy Hield and Miles Turner.
But I mean, you're freeing the cap space this summer anyway.
No, fuck that. Get rid of Russ. If I could trade Russ and get Buddy Hield and Miles Turner, I'm doing it.
But okay. All right, we've already broken our rule. Anyway, guys, let's talk about some teams that have been awesome. I was just watching, before we recorded this podcast, I was watching the Memphis Grizzlies and the New Orleans Pelicans, 2 teams that have been amazing to watch, by the way.
Yeah.
And Ja Morant is on another borderline MVP caliber campaign. And Charles Barkley actually made a point earlier tonight where he said that he doesn't think that Ja Morant makes his teammates better quite yet. And I heard that, and I love the inside the NBA guys.
It's like
funny. I get that, like, a lot of people look at basketball, like pundits and media, and like I know people look at people like us, and it's like, oh, well, you guys are just fans behind a microphone, and it's like I get people look at us, and we just think we just say things just to say things. When I heard that, I was like, I mean, what are we talking about?
I think Desmond Bane
Ja Morant is that culture, is he not?
Yeah, I was gonna say I think Desmond Bane got pretty much improved this year. You check his numbers.
Yeah,
he's taking the next step.
I think him playing around, Ja Morant's had a pretty good impact.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What do we know? What do we know?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, but guys, the other piece of it as well, Memphis could legitimately, especially looking at the Western Conference. I mean, we thought the Warriors coming into this season were this, immovable force in the Western Conference. We're aiming for a Golden State Milwaukee, finals. I don't want to like write off Golden State just yet.
I still believe.
I look, we'll get to them in a second, but I'm gonna go out on a limb. I don't think they're going to the finals, guys. I just don't, unless they make some major moves. But as of right now, currently constructed, there's a legitimate case, guys. I mean, top of the Western Conference, you have Portland, you have Denver, you have Utah, you have Phoenix. Guys, could the Grizzlies get to the finals this year?
Allen Iverson took his Sixers there in 2001. Why can't Ja Morant take this Grizzlies team? I mean, they have all the pieces.
All Allen Iverson, very similar players. Very similar players. And Jeff, he might be having that type of run with them this year.
Yeah, very similar players. Guys that, again, with Ja Morant, listen, Charles Barkley, I got a lot of love for him. But that comment about not making teammates better, I mean, come on. As much shots as AI took, he definitely made his teammates better. Like certain players you could look at and see, did they make their teammates better? Ja Morant and that Memphis Grizzlies team, I like how they're constructed. I think Desmond Bane, he's out with an injury currently. I don't know how long he's out. I think it was like a couple weeks. But once they get him back healthy, this team in the playoffs is going to be a problem. I mean, last year, the series they had against the Warriors, for a team that they didn't look like a team that setting was new to them. I mean, I don't know if it was just me, but watching those guys play basketball, like at times I'm like, this team looks like a bunch of veterans, and they're only going to get better. So I got confidence in the Grizzlies. But my point about Golden State is you just named the West. Which of those teams are beating Golden State is the question in the postseason. Now, I don't think a single one of them.
Now let's talk about Golden State.
Maybe Memphis.
Let's talk about Golden State.
Maybe Memphis.
Because specifically there was an update that happened today that was announced by the Golden State Warriors that James Wiseman has been moved to the G League for at least the next 10 days. At least. I'm going to let you guys know it's going to be longer than 10 days. So James Wiseman, not only was he not good, guys, he was bad. I mean, if we're looking at like the stats and like what he did like especially compared to his contemporaries. So this is from StatMuse, our friends over at StatMuse, not sponsored, but we've been using their stuff quite a bit of late because they have a lot of interesting stats. James Wiseman's ranked among the 2020 draft class, 29th in points, 27th in rebounds, 38th in assists, 36th in minutes. This is an unmitigated disaster for the Golden State Warriors. If they could go back and do a do-over, if they not just LaMelo, if they could have Franz Wagner
or Franz, yeah, that'd be nice.
Franz would be perfect for that team.
And what people don't forget too is that previous season, well, with the COVID season or the season where we had to end the season earlier than we wanted to, that was supposed to be the year the Warriors got a top pick, right? I mean, they took a step back. They were looking at the future. Sure, you won a championship. You can make that argument. That's the same argument that you can make of that the Pistons drafting Darko was a good idea kind of argument. Like it's not, doesn't have a lot of weight. But that really sucks for that organization because of how much you had your hopes up for adding a piece that could be your franchise player when guys like Steph and Clay even retire. And you don't really get that with Wiseman.
Well, and the other thing too is that they kind of made the pick with the thought in mind of, oh, well, not only can we get a guy that that we can build our future around, but also he's a guy that can fit in with Steph and Clay and fit in and be our big of the future of this second title run, right? And just off the talent and the greatness of the veterans that they had alone, in addition to some really solid signings that they had, thanks to some cap space that they had opened up, they were able to go and win a championship. However, the price of winning a championship is that some of those guys that you bring in on 1-year deals that play really good basketball, all of a sudden you can't bring back on 1-year deals because they're really good at basketball. In particular, Otto Porter Jr. That was
a big loss.
Missed terribly on this team. Gary Payton Jr. terribly missed on this team. I mean, we look at the Warriors currently as constructed. Who do you trust out of their starting five? Maybe Jordan Poole.
Oh yeah, that Jordan Poole definitely, but that's it.
Yeah,
that's probably it.
And so, I mean, as of right now, Moses Moody hasn't been great. Jonathan Kuminga hasn't been great. I mean, we just saw James Wiseman. He's with the G League team now. I have a feeling Kuminga and Moody could join him, or possibly those guys could be packaged and be traded for veterans. That's the only way that the Warriors are getting back to the finals.
Yeah.
Because of those little pieces. Go ahead, Jeff.
I was just going to say it's disappointing because especially watching that draft and watching James Wiseman coming out of college, I felt like, and a lot of people felt like this, you kind of already talked about it, Sean, is the perfect fit he'd be in Golden State for what they run, the spacing they'd have. You'd almost imagine him to be a better someone who could space the floor version of Andrew Bogut, and what he meant to that system in terms of his shot blocking. And that's what Wiseman could do coming out. He was just big and playing with veteran guards. I had a lot of hype for him individually. I'm not even a fan of the Warriors, but I'm curious to see how this fits. And he just hasn't been able to put it together. And in an unselfish system, you'd think Wiseman, with those many opportunities, being injured, getting to watch on the sideline, coming back this year, and now he's going to the G League. The chain of it is, what a turn of unfortunate events for James Wiseman. I'm not saying it's everybody else's fault. It's definitely James's, but I did not expect this. I expected James Wiseman to be a pretty good starter for Golden State for a long time, and it's the complete opposite.
And it's not entirely his fault, but the reality of it is the reality of this business is it doesn't entirely matter whose fault it is.
Yeah, can't play, you can't play.
Right.
Well, and the other piece of it is we talk about Killian. You brought up that quote. With Dwayne Casey and the leash that they have for Killian. The other piece of that quote was, if we were a contender, the leash would be way shorter. The Warriors are supposed to be a contender. That leash with James Wiseman was coming into the year was incredibly short. And when you show, because guys, it wasn't just that he wasn't playing great. He couldn't set screens.
I know.
He couldn't rebound. We're talking basic fundamental things. We're talking about James Wiseman and the prospect that he was. Guys, he didn't even play in college. right? Like he came in and like we see all these guys at the top, and it's like, man, all these guys are great. This is a product of a COVID draft where this was such an unknown commodity.
Yeah.
And what a disastrous pick it's been so far for the Golden State Warriors, especially the opportunity and how valuable of a pick that was.
And I don't want to sit here and question the Warriors' ability to develop players, because they've shown they can do that in the past. So with James Wiseman, you can't help but think it kind of is his fault, or at least what he's not been doing, or hasn't been learning quick enough, to your point, being the leash is so short. And that's the same case with Moses Moody. Kuminga, I think, has shown more flashes that you could say it's promising moving forward. James Wiseman, to me, like you said, he can't rebound as well as you'd expect someone who's 7'1" and to play the role he's playing. Defensively is really the liability side for him, and really for him, you expected him to be like their anchor defensively. So it's been a complete turnaround, and now he's in the G League. So hopefully, maybe it's a confidence issue. Something needs to be fixed with Wiseman, and it's sad to see, man.
So I don't want to break one of our other rules that I literally just said on this pod about 10 minutes ago, but things just keep happening during this pod.
Okay,
I just keep having to bring up. Meanwhile, in what's going on in Brooklyn Nets land, the Kings just went on a 29-4 run against the Nets. This is from our buddy Cone. Wow. So the Brooklyn Nets, a team that was 4-2 in the absence of Kyrie. You know, we talk about how much better they've been on defense. You know how well things have been going there. They just allowed a 29-4 run to the Sacramento Kings.
Are they at home? Or
they are in Sacramento.
They're doing a West Coast trip like we are. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, they just play the Lakers.
Yeah, but I mean, you know, it's not like being in the sack is, you know, going to.
It's the most like threatening place.
It's not like getting lit up by Domantas Sabonis. I mean, that'll just do it to you, right?
I mean, yeah, Harrison Barnes just giving you that jab step bucket, dude. I mean,
but what blows my mind more than allowing 29 points and probably that a short fourth quarter minute is only allowing.
Oh no, this is just in the second quarter. This is a 29-4 run.
Okay, okay. Yeah. Allowing only 4 points on your offensive end. That's what blows my mind more than anything. 4.
Yeah.
And that's Kevin Durant. Nobody on Sacramento can guard Kevin Durant. So that's a little appalling. You know, it's funny. I was watching Katie's podcast. He does on the Boardroom on YouTube, and he just talked about it. I think it was yesterday or the day prior, one or the other. And he was talking about passing, and they're like, "Well, he had a triple double, I believe. That's what it was." And they asked him like passing the ball, and he goes, "Man, it's easy. Like the passing is easy. Like I mean, as much as I've been doing it, offense, this stuff comes easy to me." And I'm just thinking to myself, you know, I like this Kevin Durant. He's got a little cocky in him. And then he comes out, and now they're getting blown out by the Kings. I'm like, I don't know, dude. I thought it was easy, Katie. I thought it was easy.
Well, no, I mean, hey, he's right. Passing's easy. It's like getting the ball to guys is easy. It's about having guys that can actually shoot it. Like who is he passing to? Ben Simmons?
Hey, don't sleep on the noms.
Don't sleep on Ben 10, man.
Oh yeah, he's been disappointing this year, really. Ben Simmons.
Yeah,
wow,
sure.
What they're paying Ben Simmons.
Yeah, he has been.
Blows me away.
Yeah, he's been hot dog water. But you know who hasn't been hot dog water? The New Orleans Pelicans are awesome. Like just the construction of like their roster.
You got a little crush on him, don't you, Sean? I know.
Dude,
you like Ingram, Sean. Admit it.
What's that?
You like Ingram. Admit it.
Oh, I love Brandon
Willie
Ingram.
Green. Hey, Willie Green's the man, dude.
Dude, I just love
dude.
But like you just talk about like, you know, like we're looking at the Pistons. We're gonna look at like how we want this team to be built. If I could go and get any team, if I could just go and just pick like players from any team in the league, I'd be like Jose Alvarado, get him on my team. I don't like we have a ton of guards. I don't care. We'll make them work. Herb Jones, give him to me. Trey Murphy, give him to me. Larry Nance, give him to me. Like they just have so many guys.
They're deep.
That play high effort basketball, that are lengthy, that can shoot threes, that communicate. Like they just play, and they don't play basketball for themselves either. And I just watched them like have a convincing win over the Memphis Grizzlies at home without Zion Williamson in the lineup just for precautionary reasons. But guys, when Zion's been in the lineup, Zion's been awesome. 24 points, 6 boards, 4.5 assists, 60% from the field. Zion's
and you
back,
called
and
this, Sean.
Zion's awesome.
You were the guy who said that if the Pelicans get Zion, that they're going to be a force to be reckoned with, and you're right. Because
it didn't even take him like a game, by the way.
Right. And we don't even know if he's fully his 100% peak self either, which means that there's so much more to see in his game. But Jose Alvarado is another guy that you mentioned his name. And I think he is such a good defensive presence too. And I think he's very calm on the offensive end that I think helps his teammates get more involved on the offensive end too. So yeah, I see a lot of good things with it, but of course the ringleader, Brandon Ingram, man. I mean, the guy is way more underrated than
he's a bucket.
Any of us give him credit to.
Yeah. Oh yeah, bona fide stud. And we talk about I know we talked a lot, over the summer about potential, trading destinations for Kevin Durant. I know we talked about New Orleans, and I know a lot of people oh yeah, easy, go trade, Kevin Durant, Kevin Durant, Brandon Ingram, boom, done. Go make that deal happen. If I'm the New Orleans Pelicans, I'm hesitant about making that deal. I don't know if I give up Brandon Ingram from Kevin Durant. Genuinely.
Which is saying so much because we're talking about Kevin freaking Durant.
Sean.
Kevin freaking Durant.
Sean, you're giving up Brandon Ingram for Kevin Durant.
I don't know, man. No, I'm serious.
I'm with Jeff. I am with Jeff, but I get your point, Sean.
Brett, I get it if you're thinking long term, you want to have.
Yeah,
but listen,
man,
if you have Kevin Durant on the Pelicans right now, I think they're a little better. Imagine Kevin Durant and Zion and CJ McCollum.
Okay.
I'm making that trade. I'm making that trade too.
I mean, okay, if Kevin Durant says I want to come to New Orleans, then yeah, okay, yeah, of course. I'm not a dumbass. I'm pulling the trigger, okay? But listen, Brandon Ingram.
You've been hesitant. You wouldn't say no, right? Yeah.
Oh yeah, I would lose. I would lose a lot of sleep over it before pulling the trigger. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, definitely.
But the other thing too, we talk about. All the talent that you brought up CJ McCollum, what a solid presence he's been, a stable presence.
Mm-hmm.
This team, they can go and potentially make moves at the deadline as well. Their future is insanely bright. And then one more team I want to talk about that's just been such a bright spot, the Portland Trailblazers. And one of the big reasons why, and I want to, Jeff, I normally don't say names on this pod, but a lot of people, including one of your co-hosts, Adam Baydoun, gave this guy a lot of shit last year and said this guy can't play basketball. And now we're actively watching Jeremy Grant be one of the big reasons why the Portland Trailblazers are not only starting off at 9-4, but guys are the number 1 seed in the Western Conference. If the playoffs were to start today, they would be atop the NBA Western Conference. And that's been with Damian Lillard missing significant time. Coming back in the lineup, and their most consistent player, their most consistent, stable presence this season has been Jeremy Grant.
And I'll tell you this, they're better on defense too with Jeremy Grant.
Guys, I heard a lot of bullshit over the last year telling me that Jeremy Grant couldn't play basketball, that Jeremy Grant was a problem for the Pistons organization, that he was a deterrent when he was on the basketball court. What do you got to say now?
I just love the fit in Portland too. I get Damian's missed significant time, but even when he's playing, to be in a situation he is in now, to be kind of the co-star next to Damian Lillard, I think he's more comfortable in that role. It's probably a better role for him than he was in Detroit, asked to kind of be that guy. And on top of that, you're playing with young players that are supposed to get all these opportunities. In Portland, it's like, hey, Jeremy, here's the ball. Go get a bucket. and he's been doing a great job of that. They're better defensively. And you know what? Shout out to 2 players, by the way. Actually, a player and a coach. Chauncey Billups doing a hell of a job. Hopefully, in the future, maybe something doesn't work out, Portland. Maybe you finagle your way over to Detroit. We'll talk about that another time. I'll talk to you, Chauncey. I'll call you. And then the other part is Shaedon Sharpe playing great basketball as well. I mean, Portland, they've drafted well. They've constructed this team. I'm going to be honest, hot take. I kind of like this team, how it's constructed compared to previous years with Portland. Like, I get they've had teams that have gone to the Western Conference Finals, but I actually like this team and how it's constructed. If they could add like one more piece,
yeah,
I like the Portland Trailblazers. I really do.
Well, guys, you look at the roster because you're like, all right, well, what's the secret, right? Like, how are they playing this well? Because it's not just the stars, right? And to your point, it's how this team's constructed over the last couple of years. Portland's been 29th in defensive rating. That's part of the reason why they moved on. From I believe it was Scott Styles, and they moved on with Chauncey Billups. And obviously last year with Chauncey, they're still 29th. This year, big difference makers, Justice Winslow playing like a Draymond green light type role for this team. He's been really good for them. Another guy that's been really good for them, Josh Hart, a guy that was acquired via trade over a couple of years ago. Anthony Simons is a guy who's continued to be stellar for them over the course of this season. Yusuf Nurkic, who they brought back over free agency this summer, has been playing really good basketball for them as well. But then in addition, the Jeremy Grant trade, and then a guy who hasn't even played for them yet this year, who's going to be really good for them, Gary Payton II. We talk about this team is number 7 in defense. They haven't even had Gary Payton Jr. back on the court.
And Simons, he's been playing well too.
Mm-hmm.
He's a bucket this year as well. I mean, you've seen some monster games from him.
So, credit to Chauncey, man. If he can keep these guys locked in on the defensive end, and these guys can, continue to hit shots, Dame can continue to play at the level that we've seen him play at certain points. Guys, there's no reason why we couldn't see Portland in the Western Conference Finals. Definitely, and from there, I feel a lot more confident about their chances than I did a couple years ago. That's for sure.
I'm with you.
Which was an incredible thing to say, because we were pretty critical. And I mean, I think most NBA fans were critical of them last year. I mean, they were so just disappointing because you had all these high expectations. And I know you trade CJ, which turned it up to be a blessing in some ways, because I think we've seen some of the best basketball a guy like Josh Hart's been playing. And you mentioned that name, Sean. Again, I think he's an important one. But yeah, I mean, I think the big thing just last year, having them be such a disappointment and having such high hopes, but then seeing them just do minor tweaks, which turned into major tweaks.
Right.
And, the big thing is Jeremy Grant, like you said, and having them now to be a true Western Conference contender is awesome.
Yeah. And there was actually, I forgot where I saw the reporting from. I do want to cite it properly and make sure, but in an interview, Damian Lillard actually talked about his connection with Jeremy Grant and how they actually bonded over their time in the Olympics when Jeremy Grant and them were on the gold medal team. And, Dame talked about how after playing together in the Olympics, they're like, this guy's a real deal. Like, we got to find a way to get Jeremy Grant. And, obviously we've seen just how much that's paid dividends for them. But Jeff, you also talked about Shaedon Sharpe, how solid he's been off the bench for them consistently day one. He's been better than anticipated. But in addition, he, like, all signs, even like rumblings. I heard in I was watching a Trailblazers game. One of their announcers, he was like, I was talking to Chauncey, and he said next year is going to be a breakout year for Shaedon Sharpe. It's like, it's not going to be this year he's going to break out. It's going to be next year. So Chauncey's apparently just super confident in this kid. And listen, all of us here are going to intend to listen to Chauncey Billups when he talks, because that guy tends to know what he knows. He knows what he talks about when it comes to basketball.
No question. And Shaedon Sharpe, too, for the year, I'm with you on the surprise and how quickly he's had success. Like, he's over 50% from the field, 44% from three. His role is go get a bucket off the bench, and he's doing just that. Athleticism, you see it translate. I love Chauncey, man. I really do. And that's why I'm wearing the hat today, because I knew we were going to talk about the Trailblazers. And Chauncey, I know you're probably not listening, but
there's a good chance he's not.
Let's just pretend Chauncey. John, hold on. John, let's just pretend like he is. All right, Chauncey, listen here. There's going to be an opportunity in the future. Just leave Portland. Come home. Come to Detroit. I get it. Yeah, I get you're having success. I get you're walking away from Dame Lillard, Jeremy Grant. I get all that. But listen, come to Detroit. Coach these young dogs, man. I would love to see coaching Cade, Ivy, and Killian, please.
Listen, if the Davidson family were still with us and they were the owners of the Pistons, I could see that phone call way more likely to be tantalizing.
Buy them out.
I mean, hey, I wouldn't say no. Like trade a second round pick or something, But
they're warming them up for us. That's all.
Yeah, I mean, hey, I wouldn't say no to Chauncey coming home and coaching for us at some point. That is for sure. I mean, so far he's been everything we were hoping he would be for them.
Hell of a coach.
Yeah,
really,
sure.
Hell of a coach.
But also, like you said, Troy, I not only are those tweaks essential, but also I think Portland made a bet that if Dame is playing really good basketball, and if they can get a rotation around him that makes sense, anything can happen in this Western Conference. Yeah. And I think that bet so far has proven to be right because, like we even said, the Warriors, who we thought were such a lock, they're not, nothing is set in stone.
It's wide open in so many ways that we haven't seen in probably 2 decades.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. I mean, again, guys, if the season were to end today, our play-in tournament in the Western Conference would be the Pelicans, the Clippers, the Kings, and the Warriors. Mm-hmm. No one would have predicted that. And then in the Eastern Conference, it'd be the 76ers, the Heat, the Pacers, and the Knicks. With the Bulls and the Nets looking on the outside. No one would have predicted that.
Every game matters too. That's what makes this regular season so exciting too. Is yes, we can sit here and say, the league's deep. There's so much potential, but the potential comes in, of course, the regular season, which then obviously lines up your playoff seeds, which makes basketball in November a heck of a lot more fun than basketball in November. Let's just say in 2009.
Yeah, for sure. And obviously
2016.
Yeah. And obviously we don't talk about, when we talk about greatness, we don't talk about basketball in November. We talk about basketball in May. We talk about basketball in June. Right. Yep. However, listen, at this podcast, we talk about basketball year round. Right. That's what we love here.
And this sets the narrative, in my opinion, to basketball in May.
Yeah. This sets the foundation.
Right.
Yeah, for sure. And at the very least, again, these are just things to look at. Again, if we look at this time last year, the Celtics had a disastrous start to their season last year. Mm-hmm. Look how they ended up.
Yep.
Right. So we could be talking about all the Warriors are doing right now, and we could be looking back at this podcast and go, "Oh, look how stupid Sean was! Like what a dumb! Did he really think Bob Myers didn't have a plan to flip their bench around and be just fine?" Jeff's probably thinking that the entire podcast, but that's the other thing. We'll be just fine. We'll all figure it out. We're gonna be okay. Everybody.
Deep breath.
But guys, before we end this podcast, we got to take another trip from Mount Rushmore, and I believe we're continuing our will he or should he will he series. And Troy, who are we arguing about today?
Yes. In my opinion, this is going to be the most fun we've had yet, and probably, well, maybe not the most controversial. But this will be a fun one, especially for us Pistons fans. Are we ready?
Oh, yeah.
Blake Griffin.
I'll start. No. And I love Blake.
Man.
I really do. Honestly, I got a lot of respect for him. I know people, and you could go check out my tweet. I bought a Blake Griffin jersey for $12.99 at TJ Maxx.
Love it.
One of the best investments I've ever made. But for Blake, let's be honest. If we're being real with his career, he's never been to a Western Conference Finals. I mean, he might this year with the Celtics, but it's not. And we always talk about winning, right? That's what made Iguodala so good, despite not being the most talented player. What he's accomplished, that deserves recognition. For Blake, it's really the opposite. One Rookie of the Year. He's made All-Star teams. But let's be honest.
2K cover.
2K cover. Good point. No. He probably won't make the Hall of Fame. If he does, I'd be shocked. I got a lot of respect for Blake, but I just think longevity too at his age, to see where he fell off and became your eighth man, at 30, 2 years old, and after the Pistons, everything kind of went downhill for him. I'm going to say no, but I got a lot of respect for him though, as a Pistons fan. Ton of respect for him.
Blake Griffin is a Hall of Fame talent. Blake Griffin is a Hall of Fame person. Blake Griffin has numbers that are Hall of Fame adjacent. He has a resume that are Massachusetts friendly. However, when push comes to shove, if you're asking me, it's like, hey, should he be in the Hall of Fame? It's like, man, when I watched Blake Griffin in his prime, he looked like a Hall of Fame player, right? Like to me, it's very akin to the Derrick Rose argument, because in my opinion, before Blake was injured, before Blake was affected by that stuff, I mean, I saw what Blake was like in Detroit, even after the athleticism was taken from him, right? When he was playing with that finesse game and he evolved in his late 20s, like Blake was awesome in his in that year in Detroit. However, if you're asking me, will he? When push comes to shove, like I just think, especially, with the amount of great players that we have coming into this league, the amount of talent that we're seeing in this league year after year, I just think he's going to get lost in the shuffle. I hate to say it, but I think he's just going to be on the outside looking in.
Yeah. And I'm going to agree with both of you guys. No is my answer for both as well. And a big part of that is, yes, Hall of Fame talent. That's why I brought him up to this conversation today. I mean, that's why we're picking up some of these players, because they are Hall of Fame talent. And in some ways, Hall of Fame worthy. But are they truly Hall of Fame worthy to push you over that hump? And Blake Griffin, to me, is not, because of the last point Sean made. And that as my biggest point, and that is he's going to get lost in the sauce when it comes to all these other guys that are coming up. And even two of his generation, too. The fact that he's never made a conference finals, when so many great players, even players that are better than him, went to conference finals. You know what I mean? And we're second or third options on those conference finals teams. I'm just thinking of a couple names, even a guy like,
well, it's like
Jimmy Butler.
I would even say, like, I would even go like a step further. Like let's say you even take, I would make the argument, if you took a guy like Tracy McGrady, who is a clear Hall of Famer, right? Like he made it in the Hall of Fame, even though he didn't really win much. He didn't really, like, in the grand scheme of things, like he made the Hall of Fame, right?
Yeah.
But if you took that same career and that same resume, but Tracy McGrady was playing now, he'd get completely lost in the sauce. He'd get completely lost in the shuffle. He'd be like a Zach LaVine caliber level player.
Right.
That we look at of like, man, you can go out and score. You can put up amazing highlights. Like, is Zach LaVine making the Hall of Fame?
Is Zach LaVine making an All-Star game?
That's the thing. Like I just think with the talent that we have now, especially like because we all, like, especially like, even I know we look at numbers a lot, but like the numbers don't even mean as much anymore. Like we're just seeing so many guys scoring so many points. It's like, like we saw Joel Embiid the other night go for like 59, 11 and 7. And it's like, that's like
the norm.
That's like semi-normal now. We look at that and go, that's human, which it isn't.
Yeah. That's one of the better players in the National Basketball Association.
But I think with Blake Griffin, he doesn't do enough in his career. He hasn't done enough, and obviously won't in his role now in Boston, to me, to be a Hall of Famer.
I think, and I don't want to say like he didn't do enough, but I think, like, when you talk about, like, you look at a lot of guys who come into the league who are number 1 overall picks, right?
Yeah.
Because a lot of these guys who come in, they have the trajectory to be great players, right?
Yeah.
Like, they have the talent to go and have this type of like the reason why, like, LeBron James, he came in with the talent that he had, but then he had the lucky breaks, but he also put in the work, but he also didn't have injuries. You know what I mean? He had like everything go right for him to be ultimately the second greatest player of all time, right? With Blake, his trajectory started up, but then the injuries started happening. He was drafted in the Clippers with the Donald Sterling era. You know what I mean? Like, and then, he was traded to Detroit and he played his ass off there, but he rode his knee to his absolute limit, which came at the cost of him being a shell of himself after that, right? Like, there's just, to me, it's like, you look at like the story of Blake, and it's like, to me, it's like similar to the story of Derrick Rose, or it's like, I don't say like those guys didn't do enough. It's like, to me, it's like there were extenuating circumstances that limited what their careers could be. Right. And I think that, to me, that's what I look at, especially with a guy like Blake. Like, you know, a lot of people are like, oh, look, he's a bum now. It's like, are you telling me if Blake like never went through a lot of those injuries that he wouldn't be like in the NBA 75? Because he would have been. Sure as hell would have been. Like Blake Griffin, like people forget, but like especially when he was on the Clippers, like around like 2015 time, he was like, this guy was literally getting votes for MVP. This guy was viewed as like a top 5 player in the NBA. Like, and it wasn't, and it like this, like the scoring and the things that he was doing, like on the perimeter, like this wasn't new when he came to Detroit. He just elevated it when he came to Detroit.
And more touches, but yeah, still true.
Yeah. So hell of a player. And like, again, like when we say it's like, oh, he probably won't make the Hall of Fame, it's like, that's not disrespect. It's just the reality of it is. Like Blake would probably tell you he's probably not going to make the Hall of Fame. That's just what it means to make the Hall of Fame. It's like, it's just, this is the 0.1% of the 0.1%.
Right.
You know? So it's a tricky balance, but I mean, it's always
a fun series though, guys. It's a fun series looking at these players' careers and making the final, you know, analyst list. I mean, and it blows my mind as we were unanimous this week about Blake Griffin not making the Hall of Fame, and we were unanimous last week about Andre Iguodala.
Great minds think alike.
So do ours.
Great minds think alike.
Oh yeah, right.
And so do ours.
Yeah, and so do ours, right?
Yeah,
but that just shows you that, you know, talent-wise, we would all probably agree Blake Griffin had the better talent and ceiling of Andre, but what Andre was able to do with his team and the impact he had on a championship level team,
finals MVP too,
like
it's tough.
You would never compare the two in an argument of who's better, but when push comes to sub for this specific topic of Hall of Fame, we both picked the guy that we wouldn't have picked of the better player, which is kind of crazy, but that's why we have these conversations.
Yeah,
great.
Without a doubt. And listen, here at From Half Court, we're going to be having all sorts of conversations because this is what we do each and every week here on the pod. If you like that, be sure you like this video, subscribe to the channel, and also be sure you follow us on the app that Elon built and the app that Elon will destroy, at Jeff Iafrady, at Troy3044, and at Sean Half Court. We want to thank you all so much for tuning in, making this a regular home for you guys each and every week, and we'll catch you guys next time from Half Court. Be sure you subscribe.